Good Tuesday afternoon, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to the I Love CVille Show, live in Charlottesville, across the Commonwealth, the country, and the world on the I Love CVille Network. Thank you for joining us, guys. We're presented by Skooma Boutique Dispensary, Skooma on the Downtown Mall, next to Rapture. Skooma Boutique Dispensary, certificates of analyses for everything in the store, CBD and Delta 8 related. David and his team have something for everyone. Anxiety, pain management, relaxing, or sleeping through the night, Skooma Boutique Dispensary has something for you. Alex Urpí will join us in about 14 minutes today in the program. The CEO of Emergent Financial Services will take a look at the equities market. They are in a tailspin. The Dow Jones down 1.5 the S&P 500 nearly 2 points, and the NASDAQ very much reeling, down 2.5 points. The yield, the 10-year yield, is upticking and going up and up and up, and often the NASDAQ hit the hardest by raising rates, and that has certainly happened today. If you have in your portfolio ETFs like QQQ, you are right now biting your fingernails, although it's the long game that matters and not the short game that matters. A lot we're going to cover on today's program. We'll take a look as we inch closer to October 1. We are now less than 72 hours away from the first day of October. And the first day of October means we have less than 5 weeks from what I've called the most important election in Charlottesville, Virginia history. I think we all think Brian Pinkston and Juan Diego Wade are slam dunks to get reelected. Yaz Washington, although she has an opportunity with Nakia Walker's withdrawal from this election, it does not seem, as Dave Norris said, she has the infrastructure in place to capture the market share that was Nakia Walker's and push herself over the edge and get 1 or 2 spots on council. We'll talk about the election today on the program. We will talk about school bus drivers in Albemarle County, leveraging the power of collective bargaining. The conversation in yellow tin cans across Albemarle County is, should we clock in and not drive these buses today to make our voice and our point heard? So that is something that is gaining more momentum and more popularity. Literally, as I'm talking right now, I will follow that closely on today's program. I want to highlight a listing on King Street in Fifeville. This came up on Real Talk, our real estate show that airs Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays on the I Love CVille Network, presented by Guest Realty Partners. Here's the nitty-gritty. This listing sent to us by Grayson on Twitter. $369,000 asking price. $369,900 to be in fact. The listing is on King Street, which is in Fifeville, in walking distance of the UVA hospital. Folks, here's the world we live in Charlottesville, Virginia, and be prepared to have your jaw drop and hit the desk in front of you. $369,900 asking price. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, no garage, 775 square feet, a home built in 1953 on a postage stamp size of a lot, 0.16. This cottage, if you may, we'll call it a cottage, has an asking price of basically $370,000. This right here is your affordable, air quotes, affordable price point for the city of Charlottesville. The condition is somewhat decent. The price was cut at the end of August to get to more tangible or realistic pricing. I bring this to your attention because if a 775 square foot cottage is the affordable price point in our town, then where are we going from an affordability standpoint? Our friend Ray Cadell and Associates, very realistic man, a straight shooter, he has said multiple times on the I Love CVille Network, perhaps home ownership is not in the cards for everyone anymore. And perhaps home ownership that is not in the cards for everyone anymore maybe that's not such a big thing. It's a decent point from Ray Cadell of Ray Cadell and Associates. This listing at 813 King Street goes on the market in July, the 8th of July, for $419,900. Here we are, September 28th, 2 months and 20 days later, and the home is still sitting on the market with a price cut of $369,900. We're talking a substantial cut of essentially $60,000. The market is saying, whoa, 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 this is overpriced, let's pump the brakes here. Still, I would expect this home, because of the proximity to the university healthcare system, to trade somewhere close to that $369,900 asking price after 2 price cuts by the listing agent. Folks, we have crazy times in front of us and crazy times in our future. You're looking at what Charlottesville and Albemarle County has to offer, and it's everything. That's why we've been ranked the best place to live by so many publications for so many years running. What comes with that moniker and that ranking is a lack of affordability, because folks from outside the area are chopping at the bit to move here and scoop up the real estate that we so dearly need. And I'm here to tell you, and I'm here to emphasize, and I'm here to prioritize that new inventory, existing inventory, is not going to be coming on the market in droves anytime soon. So you live with it, you deal with it, you buy it, or you don't. You stay local, or you move to a place that's in the outer counties, other side of the mountain, that's potentially more affordable for you. Regardless, it's the nature of living in a popular jurisdiction or municipality that has demand through the roof. And that, my friends, is Charlottesville, Virginia. And that, my friends, is Albemarle County. Now, I got a lot of positive feedback from our Albemarle County show yesterday. We did a serious deep dive on Crozet, Virginia, with Mark McKinney, who's on the Crozet Community Advisory Committee. And he offered tremendous perspective on all things Crozet, including the downtown project, including middle density, workforce housing, including the role Old Trail plays in Crozet, the role the old guard of Crozet plays in the evolution of this area, and how the those that live in like the Gray Rock subdivisions, the role they play in Crozet. I very much encourage you guys to check out yesterday's show with Mark McKinney. It was absolutely fantastic. Crozet Community Advisory Committee member that offered tremendous perspective for Crozetians across the board. Now, I want to talk football. I talked briefly about this yesterday. Virginia football travels to Miami. Kickoff Thursday evening, 9:30, ESPN. The Wahoos are a 4-point underdog, and the over-under is at 62 points. Miami is not the Miami Hurricanes we knew of 20 years ago. The Hurricanes are vulnerable. They've been exposed already this year. Michigan State beat them. Alabama beat them. Oklahoma State has beat them. Miami on the season is 2-2 overall. 2-2, 0-0 in conference play. They got athletes, and you know they're going to bring it when they play in South Florida, but this is a winnable ball game for Bronco Mendenhall and Virginia football. From my standpoint, I'll say it once, I'll say it again. This team has got to figure out how to run the football and starting to control time of possession. Virginia's defense is undoubtedly the weakest point of this roster. When your defense is so weak, and Virginia's is putrid, it's not good through 4 games this year. We got to keep the defense on the sidelines as much as possible. How we do that is running the football and controlling time of possession. Virginia, we know we can pass the rock. Brendan Armstrong leads the nation in passing yards a game. This dude is averaging over 430 passing yards a contest. It is truly amazing, and I think you got to say Brendan Armstrong is on the short list for ACC Player of the Year. And if he continues producing at this clip, maybe you have him in the conversation for Heisman Trophy. I'm not saying he's going to win that award. The award goes to somebody who is on a roster and is generally contending for conference titles and or national championships. And I don't think Virginia football is going to do either of those because of the weakness of its defense. That being said, when you're averaging 430-plus yards a contest, you got 6 touchdowns in the air, only 2 picks, and you're running the ball pretty darn well, Brennan Armstrong is going to be on the short list for a lot of awards. Whether that's ACC Player of the Year, maybe we make an argument down the road if this clip continues, Heisman Trophy, short list, not winner, candidate, not winner. Armstrong is getting notoriety and he's getting recognized. He should. This guy's development from last year when he was essentially a converted safety. Brennan Armstrong played safety in high school, guys. He was a hard-hitting safety in high school. Last year we saw that. A guy that wanted to bang between the tackles and run the football. As a result, he got hurt, banged up, didn't play a lot of contests last year. This year we're seeing a dude who's evolved into a pocket passer. A guy who would prefer to toss the pigskin around to talented athletes and playmakers. And good Lord, this team has so many talented athletes and playmakers. I mean, Mr. Wicks, this guy is a problem. The wide receiver for Virginia football. He's got 22 catches on the season, 4 touchdowns, and 460 yards receiving, and he's dropped a lot of passes. I mean, he is extremely talented. You got a tight end who's 6'7", and 260 pounds that undoubtedly is going to play football on Sundays in the National Football League. I would love to see Virginia football commit itself to running the football a little more to control time of possession. And if you control the clock, keep the defense on the sidelines. I would love to see that. Let's mask and disguise our weakness by keeping them on the sidelines, by burning time of possession and the play clock. And if you do that, you keep the defense fresh, you keep the offense clicking, and you potentially have more victories on your schedule this given year. I'm curious of your thoughts on that topic. We'll go to the feed. This one from Grayson. Grayson is watching the program. Grayson Williams. He said, Virginia football is going to be exposed as this season progresses. This defense cannot stop a JV football team. I'm not going to go that far, Grayson. I think they have athletes, and they certainly have gotten riddled with the injury bug. But watch out for the club as Bronco figures this out. I think Bronco may need to take over play calling. I hate to say this. Alex Urpí is in studio. Alex Urpí, I'm on time today. Why don't you come over, my friend, and we'll welcome Alex to the show. Judah Wickower, our director, if we can go to the 2-shot. Liza, the dog, says hello to our friend, Alex Urpí.
I see her out there.
Liza says hello to Alex. All right, my friend, a lot I want to get to. I know you're a diehard orange and blue fan. What's going on with this football team before we get to the equities market?
I think it really is. I'm a little bit disappointed in the defense, I got to be honest with you. If you had told me that Armstrong would be playing this well as quarterback,
We would have taken it.
and we would be scoring this many points, I would have said we're going to win a lot of games. I would definitely have expected us to beat Wake, and I would have been confident in us to beat UNC.
Agreed.
Also, because UNC has not been playing too well. I think they lost to Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
I think right after playing us. And I'm just a little surprised because Bronco, he was definitely a big defense guy in our first couple of years, but it's been a little disappointing this year. I'm hoping they can turn it around. Maybe sometimes defenses need a little time to gel, but unfortunately I think the Coastal may have passed us by. We might just be, the goal might now be, to win those 6 games and get to a bowl game.
The positive of this situation is the ACC in totality is down.
Oh, yes.
So if we can recover, potentially we can start climbing up the division. That being said, my friend, when I have somebody as talented and as smart as you on set, I got to go to one of your specialties, and it's stocks, it's equities, it's investing, It's the markets. I'm looking at the ticker here on CNBC.
Oh, we're down today.
Amigo, mucho rojo aquí.
Muchísimo rojo.
Yeah. ¿Qué pasa? What's going on here?
Today it's a little tricky. So this is where I think, and this is a good little educational lesson for people on how bond yields affect the market, because part of what's happening today is that yields are rising on treasuries, which is treasuries, United States debt. And they're rising mostly because in the bond market, people are expecting the Federal Reserve to begin tapering. And by that, what we mean by that is the Federal Reserve has been purchasing a lot of bonds in the open market. And so if you think about it, if someone really big is purchasing a lot of bonds, what happens to the price of bonds? It goes up. What happens to the yield? It goes down. So now if the Federal Reserve says we're not going to do that anymore, we're going to pull back, we're not going to be buying as much, you now have the reverse effect, right? So people now begin to sell bonds, which pushes down the price of bonds, which pushes up the yield of bonds. There's always a reverse relationship. And what that has, TET is the one being hit hardest today.
NASDAQ.
Because this has a very big effect on TET. And the reason
Explain
it does
why.
that... Exactly. So the reason it does that is that if you think about a lot of tech companies, you're not getting cash now. If you're buying an Amazon, or not, well, Amazon now is paying, but if you're buying a lot of these NASDAQ companies, some of these early stage biotechs, what Apple used to be 10 years ago, no dividends. You're buying these companies for future cash. And the way that in the market you figure out how much future cash is worth is with bond yields. Because you're basically saying, what's the rate, what's the interest rate, and I'm going to discount my future cash by that rate. So if the rate at which because we all know, right, intuitively, right, $100 10 years from now is not worth the same to me as $100 right now today. If I said to you, Jerry, can I borrow $100 and I'll pay you back in $100 in 10 years, you'd be like, no. Right. I need more. I need more than 100 in 10 years from now. So, but the rate, the way you figure out how much more you need 10 years from now is with an interest rate. You figure out, okay, I think I need to be compensated 2%. You calculate backwards and you figure out, Alex, this is how much you got to pay me back in 10 years. And so what the market is doing is saying with a lot of these tech companies, their future cash is now being discounted at a higher rate. They're not worth as much as they were yesterday, so I'm going to sell. And that's why TET is being hit hardest. It also doesn't help that TET likes to do a lot of stock buybacks. And stock buybacks, borrow at extremely low rates, buy your own stock. If the rate at which you're borrowing goes up, that's less attractive to do the stock buyback. So I think that's why TET is really being hammered today, and it's bleeding a little bit into the rest of the market.
I love when the closer offers perspective. And the closer, Xavier, it sounds like you were invited to a bingo night. Did you hear?
Yes, I heard the news. All you
have to do is show the Antonio Banderas face and bring either Xavier or Nicholas with you.
I heard only
Quentin is going to give $500 to AHIP.
I know. I heard only 2 out of 3 Urpís need to show up.
So are you going to go?
I'll have to see. There's a certain special someone that I have
so you have a date tomorrow.
I have a date tomorrow.
So it sounds like it's going to be Xavier and Nicholas.
2 out of 3, or maybe 3 out of 4.
We'll see. Michael.
We'll see if he's able to do it.
Mrs.?
We'll see. No, it would be Michael.
Okay. It would not be Mrs.
My mom, I don't know. She's probably enjoying the relaxation.
Yeah, she's like, get these men out of the house.
Do I have to go hang out with them at 5 o'clock?
Xavier, how will rising interest rates slow down inflation, given that today's inflation is not due to a booming economy? Excellent question.
That is a great question. And I think the one possible answer that I would offer is they won't. In other words, if inflation is being caused by the classic too much money chasing too few goods, right? That's your classic Milton Friedman line of the Federal Reserve is printing too much money, you now get inflation. If that's your cause of inflation, then yes, okay, the Federal Reserve pulling back the money supply you would think that would drop inflation. But if inflation is being caused by increasing demand, supply chain issues,
yep.
Shortages of certain raw materials.
Are you talking fuel there, oil?
Fuel there, oil. I mean, okay. I know Gulf of Mexico is still recovering from 2 hurricanes at this point. So if that's the cause, they can raise rates all they want. It's not going to change inflation. But if inflation is being caused by, if what we call inflation, I should correct this. There's really 2 types of prices going up, right? One of them is there's a lot of people who want something and not as many people that have it. So you classic law of supply and demand. If there's 100 people that want to eat in my restaurant, I only have 50 seats, I'm going to jack up my prices, right? And that's not really inflation as we think about it. That's just, there's a shortage of seats, there's a lot of people that want it, prices go up. And you think about lumber, that's what happened earlier with lumber this year. That's not inflation in the sense that the Federal Reserve printed too much money. There is not enough wood given how many people want to build homes. And so if that's the cause, then the Federal Reserve is not going to be able to solve that by pushing up rates or by ending tapering. If the cause is the Federal Reserve put too much money into the system and now they got to try to take some money out of the system, that's different. But the real question is it the Federal Reserve that's put too much money in the system, or is it the fiscal side that the federal government spent $4 trillion last year and they're trying to spend another $3.5 billion this year?
Sounds like you have an answer for us.
So, I mean, you sit there and say the Federal Reserve can try to pull back on this balance sheet, but if the other side, the fiscal side, keeps spending money, that they're putting more money into the economy no matter what the Federal Reserve does, and you can't hold that back.
So questions coming in for you. Lisa Costello has some perspective that she's sharing. I'm curious of your take on this. Alex Urpí, guys, the CEO of Emergent Financial Services. Gentlemen, my son and I took a tour of New York City. Our native New Yorker guide explained to us this is how New York is now. To live in New York City, one has to be either very rich or very poor. She then continues, I see Charlottesville moving closer and closer to this. It is getting to the point where one has to be wealthy even for a small house here. We have a good number of public subsidized housing for indigent, disabled, and elderly in Charlottesville, but besides that, what do we have? And Xavier says, I love bingo. So it sounds like he's committed.
I think he's committed. He's
$500 for AHIP, Xavier. If you show up with one of your scions.
Oh, he will get at least one son.
He'll get one son to come.
We are going to get that $500 for AHIP, and I heard it's free drinks is involved.
Yeah, Carrie Rock is going to buy the Urpí's around of drinks,
which is much appreciated. That's tempting. I might call up my girlfriend and say the date is at the brewery. Hey, maybe you want to go out for a date?
You'll know you have a keeper if she says yes to that.
She says yes.
She's a keeper regardless.
She is a keeper regardless.
So what do you make about Lisa's New York comment?
That's
and how it applies to Charlottesville?
That's a great comment, because I think my father has been telling me the same thing, that it's kind of sad when he talks to people that are in New York. There's people that we know that they run a business in Astoria, which is technically it's across in Long Island City, but in Queens. But they were saying they almost never go into Manhattan anymore, because so much is now the middle class that used to be that small business class has been basically completely wiped out. And it is sad to see what's happened to New York, because it was doing so much better than it had been in like the 70s and 80s, and it had really come out of it. But we'll have to see what happens. I think with Charlottesville, I do definitely see that worry here, because I think sometimes we have this focus of that the only solution to like a housing issue is, well, we just build some like affordable housing. But there's also just a matter of just pushing supply up to meet demand. In other words, what typically should happen in a healthy market, right, to prevent exactly what she's describing, which is you have super high housing prices so that rich people can afford it, but middle class can't, and then subsidized housing, which middle class people have too much for, and only the poor can technically be able to take advantage of, right? Typically, when you have something where you say there's too much demand for housing, what typically happens? Someone says, well, let me go build some houses, right? I mean, if there was a shortage of potatoes, what would someone do? Let me plant some potatoes and sell them because I can make some money by filling this gap. And I think what you were describing, and you had a great Instagram post on this, of about, what was it, 24% of a housing cost is red tape. So you sit there and saying, that's not a market putting a pressure on supply. That's an artificial pressure on supply. Exactly. That's an artificial pressure on supply, which then reduces supply artificially. So we're hampering the market's ability to respond, because the market's response to the housing prices being too high is always the same. Somebody says, I want in on that high prices, I'm going to build some houses, and before you know it, the price comes down because there's now more supply. But if the supply is not keeping up, it means something's holding it back, because we know this community, right? We know that there are people in this community that are really smart entrepreneurs that if they were not being held back, they would be looking at a high housing price and saying, I want a piece of this.
Here's an interesting question, and this is a test of you. First, Bashir from Bashir's Restaurant in the Downtown Mall. He says, hello, Alex.
Oh, tell him I said hello. I was always sad I didn't go to his restaurant down there.
He says, I lived in Manhattan when gentrification started and what the city became. Lisa hit it right on the nose. Lisa Costello from the comment. People moved to Hoboken across the river. I hope CVille will never get to what New York City is right now. Amen, Bashir. I'll give you props on this. This is from a mama. This is a mama of two. It's from Jennifer. She says, Jerry, ask your guest if he knows the current price of a gallon of milk.
Oh, that's a good question. Problem is, I don't think I ever buy a gallon. I think we buy, like the pint
half gallons?
ones. I think the half gallon, which was, I think, last time we went, was it almost between $3 and $4? So, I mean, we'd get the organic one.
You guys get the super
We'd
deluxe
get the organic
one.
one.
Okay, the Miller's don't go the organic.
Yeah, okay. We do organic. So I'm a little higher probably than what others are paying.
Okay, so...
But that's a good point, is food.
That's what she's getting to. That's the second part.
One of the trick things with inflation, right, is Federal Reserve comes out and says inflation's running at 4%. Food very typically runs higher than headline inflation.
So she says a gallon of milk at Wegmans, we get the 2% reduced fat, non-organic, is $2.79. I want you guys to go shopping next time, she says, and check out your bill and how much it's increased year over year. I'm talking an increase for my family of $30 to $45 more per week in groceries alone.
Wow.
That's a good chunk of money.
That's a good chunk.
I mean, let's use for the sake of conversation, let's say $45 a week, okay? Because and Jennifer, I don't want to assume, probably what she's not counting in this increased grocery bill is gasoline's gone up about $1.20 year over year.
Oh yeah, probably not even counting the cost to get to the grocery store.
To and from the grocery store. So why don't we call it an even $50 a week? We're talking $200 a month additionally for her family, $2,400 a year in increased costs just on groceries, Alex.
Oh, exactly. And that percent has to be well above the 5-6 that we're seeing in terms of the headline number.
Don't you think?
And it's well above that, and it always has been. I mean, even in the past decade, when the Federal Reserve has been consistently saying inflation's only at 1 to 2%, we need it to be higher, and so forth. You talk to the average person, and we've been seeing it in my family as well. You go to the store and you're like, the stuff I buy, the groceries I buy are not increasing at 1 to 2% over the last decade. They've been increasing 3-4% a year. Eggs, milk, bread, increasing by much more than that. And that's why I think, and Xavier probably would he would completely agree with me on this. He has been on this for a long time in the sense that he cannot understand, and I sympathize with him, and I tend to agree with him on this, why the Federal Reserve desires inflation when it really is pernicious for the average person in almost every circumstance.
Okay, explain that, layman's terms.
So basically, I used a literary word there, pernicious, in terms of very bad.
This man is also a published author and also a finance expert. He uses both sides of his brain. I have to get him to dumb it down to my level, the 6th grade level, please.
Exactly. I went to a literary word there. But what I'm trying to express is that inflation is, in almost all cases, bad for the average consumer. Because you think about it, the average person, you do not want to see the things you buy for your family go up in price, particularly when your wages are not keeping pace with that. And so you sit there and say, we have a central bank that has a target of that which is not good for the average person. Really, the only people who benefit from inflation are people who are in debt. So if I owed you, let's say I owe you $100, Jerry, and inflation runs at 5% for the next 10 years before I pay you this money, I'm very happy to give you back this $100 in 10 years, because that $100 in 10 years is going to be worth so much less than it is today, right? So that's the only scenario under which you benefit. But in terms of going out and buying things, going out and buying cars, let's say you need a new car, right? And my dad and I talked about this all the time. And your new car is now $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 more than the previous one you bought. The Federal Reserve can say all they want, well, it's a better car, so the inflation really isn't that high because your old car didn't have the little push button and it didn't have the touch screen. But you sit there, if you're the person buying the car, you say, I don't care about all that stuff. I can't go buy my old car for $30,000 less. All I know is that it now costs me $30,000 more to get a vehicle to be able to drive my family to where they need to go. So you looked at these things and you just realize that there is a dichotomy, and we've talked about it, Wall Street, Main Street, that inflation is very good free money is very good for Wall Street. They borrow the free money, they buy back their own stock. It is not so good. It is not good for the average person out there that needs to go and buy things to live, particularly when the things you need to live, rent, in many cases, and groceries, food are running higher than even the number that you see on the news.
So she follows up. Are we not effectively pricing out the middle class? She's a mom of 3. Mm-hmm. She goes, I feel we are pricing out the middle class. We are both working parents, and right now, our bills and our money are stretched thin.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, and I agree. I agree with you. I agree with her. I think between what we did last year to basically shut down the middle class, and now this year where we're basically making all the expenses of the middle class higher, we have done, financially speaking, the powers that be have done a disservice to the middle class, I think, over the past, if you want to just zoom to the end of this year, the past 2 years, and probably longer.
Isn't the middle class often, and we got to choose our words carefully here, because we're empathetic for all folks, mm-hmm. to the plight of all people. But the middle class is often overlooked and big time marginalized by decisions the Fed has done, by increased. I mean, she's basically saying we're approaching paycheck to paycheck status here.
I know. And
they both work.
And it is sad. I mean, isn't it sad that we've reached the point where you require 2 breadwinners to provide for a family? It would be nice if the 2 parents would decide, well, do I want to work or not? But we're at the point where it's not, for many families, it's not even a decision.
In this town,
it's like, if you want to survive, sometimes both have no choice but to work.
Xavier, global governments do not like the middle class. Assets, that's one of the reasons real estate is booming. Low rates and an inflation hedge. More comments coming in here. Mm-hmm. She follows by saying, the middle class bloc is one of the most engaged voter base. Why do our elected officials forget about us?
Well, if I want to be a little cynical here, engaged voter base does not necessarily translate into most influence.
Oh.
Because if you think about it, because we are such a generous and altruistic nation, there are many nonprofits / lobbyists, right, who have the interest of the poor at heart, right? I mean, we see it here. And so there will always be that kind of representation to say, I'm here advocating for the poorest among us who cannot advocate for themselves in many cases. And I think we will always have that in this country because we are a generous and giving country. And then, of course, on the flip side, right, the elite in the country, right, will always have their networks and their connections. So they have influence. A lot of times it's the middle class that, in terms of who is present in Washington, D.C., in state houses, in the places where the Federal Reserves meet, in Jackson Hole, the middle class has no representation there. We might have representation in the voting booth, right? But when it comes to having a voice at where some of these decisions are made, I mean, can you name? I can't name a single middle class lobbying organization.
No, I cannot either.
I can name a bunch of wealthy ones, and I can name a bunch of nonprofits that do good work for the poor, but I cannot name a single middle class lobbying.
Carol Thorpe, welcome to the show. What are your thoughts on this topic, Carol Thorpe? She likes Xavier's comment about global governments do not like the middle class. He adds, think Cuba and Venezuela. Carol, I'm curious of your perspective. This comes from another mom. This is from Laura. She says, are we eventually going to be a city and a town of rich and working class only with no middle class?
Oh, goodness, I hope not. I hope not. I think the one thing I would say we do have going is that there is a very strong small business support in terms of, like, the community that I find in Charlottesville, Albemarle has a very strong desire to support small business, even at their own expense. And what I mean by that is you'll see campaigns, you'll meet people who are willing to spend a little more at a small business than try to save $5 and go to Walmart. And that, I think, can be very beneficial. I think that if we can get some of these other things in order in terms of the housing, I think that can be very beneficial in terms of helping the middle class survive. Whereas when small businesses are doing well, that's when I think the middle class is at its strongest. If you have a bifurcate where the only thing you have left in a town is Walmart, Lowe's, Costco, all the big stores, right? Then you are going to have a working class and I'm trying to figure out the word, an upper class, right? But the middle class is mostly where the small business owners and the employees of those small business owners are going to be located.
What do you think of your brother's comment here? Nicholas, good comment.
What's he giving us?
Government stratify society so that the rich, poor can fight each other rather than having a strong middle class that points the finger at them.
It's sad to say that very typically happens in history. I mean, he's probably, so Nit is for those who don't know, Nicholas actually, he studied history of European economics.
And Nick is a smart dude.
And he's a very smart guy. And so he's probably seen, if you look historically, right, there is much to be gained in terms of getting your brand out there in terms of being a politician by saying, well, I'm going to work for this special interest group and this one, and I'm here for you and you. The middle class is just too large and vague. There's no specific benefit. It's often called the difference between specific benefits and diffuse costs. And what that means... When you do this.
I love this guy.
You like the little lessons. And what that means in layman's terms is when you have a group that can benefit strongly from something and another group that is only hurt mildly by it because it's a larger group, then the group that benefits strongly has a very big incentive to go out and advocate for something. So if you think of something like sugar quotas, as an example, the United States has a lot of sugar quotas, which most people don't know, which artificially increases the price of sugar in this country. Now, if you think about it, most people in the country, right, most of the middle class, we don't benefit from a sugar quota. We get hurt by it because sugar is 5 to 10 cents more expensive than it would be otherwise. But for you or me individually on any given day when we go to the store and buy sugar, are we sitting there saying, I am so upset at this 10 cents more of sugar, I'm going to march on Washington and demand an end to the sugar quota? Nobody does that.
No, we don't do that.
Right? Even though if you sum us all up, we're paying a lot as a middle class for it. But if you think about the sugar manufacturers, a much smaller group, their benefit from a sugar quota in terms of each of them individually could be in the millions of dollars. So they have a very strong incentive to go and march on Washington and say, we demand a sugar quota so that our businesses are not hurt. And if you think about it, that's kind of the issue we're having here, right? The middle class, we're being hammered, but it's so diffuse and so spread out among such a large group that no individual person has the incentive to go march on Washington and demand that the Federal Reserve change their policy on how much inflation they should be looking for.
Carol Thorpe, the middle class has the most education to be unengaged while working the most hours to remain unequaled. Mm-hmm. It's cursed by that combination. Mm-hmm. Carol Thorpe right there. Here's Mark McKinney, Community Advisory Committee, our guest on yesterday's show. Check out the interview if you're from Crozet or if you're concerned with density and land use and the comprehensive plan in Crozet. It's on ilovecville.com. Alex, he says, is the inflation we are seeing at grocery stores on products the same as if we bought those products from local farmers and cut out the middleman? For example, what would it be if a family shifted buying meat and vegetables and eggs right from local farmers in our area instead of from grocery stores?
That's a great question. It's difficult to say because if you're typically the way supply and demand works, if you begin to shift towards local producers, the prices may also rise there too, in a sense, because local farmers are in the same boat we are, right? If you only have so many goods to sell and you have more demand than you have goods, you inevitably raise the price to equalize it. This way you don't have people coming at the end of the day and saying, I have nothing to give you because I sold everything already.
So basically if I go to Anderson's on Ivy Road, mm-hmm. Anderson Seafood and Catering, one of the fantastic clients of the I Love CVille Network. We built their website. We love you, Ted Anderson. And we buy oysters and lobsters and crabs from him, as opposed to going to Wegmans and buying oysters and crabs and lobsters from them. Will we be better off from an inflation standpoint because we take that middleman out of the equation?
I can't guarantee you'd be better off from an inflation standpoint, because many times it's not always the middleman. The market tends to figure out what the actual price is, and then people are divvying up the inside. What I can say, however, is without a doubt, it will be better for the local economy. Because there you are supporting a local small business owner, right, who's now most of, if not all of what he receives is going to be going back into the local economy. Whereas when you shop at a Wegmans, right, as much as I like that store as well, you know that a very large percentage of that is going to go up the chain to be distributed in other locales. So if you want to strengthen the local economy, sometimes you have to be willing to say, am I willing to pay that 50 cents more for a pound of broccoli at a local farmer's market than at a supermarket, because I know that 50 cents is going to stay here. And I know that a lot of the 50 cents I spend at the larger chain is not staying here. So that's your big difference. I can't guarantee on the inflation side, because it's such a major factors that are at work there.
Nicholas for Mark McKenney. Mark McKenney, you got a response in the comment section from Nicholas Urpí. He goes, as to Mark's question, and I loved Mark's interview, but would visiting each and every farm require higher transportation costs and potentially negate your savings? Jennifer has followed up again and said, did Alex give us the price of a gallon of non-organic milk at the grocery store?
So I did. No, I did the price of
half gallon super deluxe organic.
Nice organic.
Yeah.
Organic one.
So I can tell you this, a gallon of non-organic milk. We go skim milk in our family. Do you go
whole
skim?
Milk.
You go whole milk.
Whole
Good
milk.
night, amigo.
You can't make a cappuccino.
Carajo, amigo.
With skim milk.
You're going the whole milk. Are you drinking the whole milk in the glass?
No. I do. We'll put it. We'll mix it with coffee.
In the cereal?
In cereal, or mix it with your coffee, because you make your espresso.
Antonio here has a high metabolism as well. Very impressive.
I love my dairy and my sugar. You gotta be whole. Have you ever tried to make a cappuccino with skim milk?
No, is it not good?
Doesn't work.
Okay, what do you say about Cubans? What runs through your blood?
Sugar. Azúcar.
I love this guy. So skim milk Wegmans $2.79, Jennifer,
wow,
for a gallon of skim milk at Wegmans. I appreciate that comment. My friend, we got the fourth quarter coming upon us. Mm-hmm. This is the time of Halloween and Thanksgiving and Christmas and various holidays that often drive local economies. Mm-hmm. It could be potentially convoluted and clouded with Delta and COVID. It could be potentially convoluted and clouded with increased gas prices that are now over $3, potentially going higher.
$80 a barrel.
$80 a barrel. Could be potentially clouded and convoluted by what we're talking about, inflation here. How do you see that playing out this Q4?
Oh, it's a number of factors that are really putting some question marks here. My hope is that one of the things we have been seeing with COVID so far is that it very much likes to come in waves. And we're having like waves and crests, and we seem to be in a wave now. But I'm just even thinking back to last year where everyone was unvaccinated. If you think about back to last year, it still had its waves, that there would be stretches where we'd be looking at the numbers and saying, oh, Virginia doesn't look so bad now. And so my hope is that that's what we're seeing. In other words, this is not one of those endless waves of people just ending up in the hospital and more infections, but that we'll see this crest. And if it crests in the fourth quarter, I think there's a good chance that then people will begin to feel comfortable going out again. Because, I mean, we saw how comfortable people were at the May, June.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Chamber of Commerce networking events were full. People were going out. So I think it really just a lot of it depends on just what transmission level people are seeing in the community. The more you see, the more nervous people get. And we have been seeing very wave-like effect of COVID, which is, I mean, it's not the most unusual thing in the world. The flu does that basically every year, waves and crests. And so my hope is that as that crest, we'll begin to see people go out, be willing to do more, and stay local, because that's really the key. That the thing that worries me about Delta is that one of the things about buying local, right, is you typically go to a store in person and you buy it. There's not a lot of local Amazons in a sense, right? There's a temptation, I think, when people try to buy something online that they just go straight to Amazon. You don't bother typing in the website of your local business and seeing if they ship or they do pickup. And I wish people did more of that. But so my hope is that as people are more willing to go out and do things in person, that when the holiday season comes, we will see people go to the local shops to do their shopping, is my hope.
Another comment for Alex Urpí, and this one's a little bit creepy, but also very fascinating and curious as well. So this comment, guys, is from Kimberly Johnson. She said, Alex, you got takeout from Chim over the weekend. What did you get and why? Did you get takeout from Chim?
I did, but I don't know what Kimberly Johnson that would know this information.
Kimberly, how do you know that Alex got takeout?
Does she work at Chim?
Do you work at Chim, Kimberly? No, I don't think so. I think she's a realtor. How do you know Alex got takeout at Chim over the weekend? Did you get takeout at Chim?
I did. I had a little volleyball with some friends and then grabbed some. Okay,
hold on. Kimberly, let us know how you know Alex got takeout at Chim. So she wants to know what your thoughts were and what you ordered. And she's going to maybe offer an update how you know he got takeout at Chim.
That would be nice.
Are you stalking him?
That would be nice to know. Do I need to look over my shoulder? I didn't have that strange, the strange sensation of someone watching you. I didn't have it. So
you did get it, though?
I did. Yeah. I did. I went there.
She responded. I recognize his face from this show and the show that he does. We were coming out of the movie theater and at Extreme Pizza, and I saw Alex outside Chim.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm glad. I'm glad it's kind of funny. I've never gotten to the point where I thought people would recognize my face.
Well, now you did.
From not previously knowing them.
No
obviously.
Secrets in Charlottesville.
I just not. Well, I guess something's working. I'm glad today Manana and this show are working. People are recognizing me.
So what'd you get?
So I got dumplings.
Okay.
I'm a big dumpling guy, whether it's Chim, Peter Chang's, Monsoon Siam. I'm a big fan of my dumplings. So
Toughest question for you. Best dumplings in town. Because you got Marco and Luca, too.
We have Marco and Luca, too.
Chims are pretty darn good.
Chims are good. The problem is they're all different, right? Because the Chim dumpling is like the little, it's almost like...
It's the thin wrap.
The thin wrap, and it's like circular, and they put something inside, whereas the Marco and Luca are more crispy. Because and a little thicker, and then the Peter Chang are extremely thin. They're all... I don't think I could pick, because sometimes when you're in the mood for different ones. And I will say the one thing I will say for Marco and Luca is I love them. We gave them Chuck Lewis Passion Award for Adelante. Beautiful people, Dradana and Sunda over there. Whenever I go to Marco and Luca's dumplings, I get the dumpling and the pork bun. And the pork bun is a really big plus, let's just say. The pork bun is a very big plus.
This man loves food. He's so passionate about food. I love it. So Carol wanted me to reread her comment here. She says, because of typing on my phone and autocorrect, my comment read as making no sense. Please reread this to Alex. The middle class has the most education to be engaged while also working the most hours to remain unengaged. It is cursed by that combination.
That makes a lot of sense. It is true. I mean, when you're working, if you're working all week, right? Maybe it's sometimes more than 40 hours a week, especially with each spouse. Do you really have time to say, I'm going to go put together a really big political action committee to go to Washington and say that the Federal Reserve really needs to rethink whether they want inflation to run at 5%? Or what do they say? They want it to average 2. So do they really want it to run at 5 half the time and 0 the other half of the time? And in reality, the middle class does not have the time to do that. right? And the funny thing is, neither do the poor. But the difference is, we're such a generous country that we have people who advocate on behalf of them. But there's no one that sits there and says, "Oh, I want to advocate on behalf of the middle class," as though that were a special interest group in and of itself. And the middle class, I think she's absolutely right, has no time to do themselves, because you're raising a family and you're working really hard, and you have both spouses working to try to make a living.
Follow-up question from Kimberly. If he won't tell us his favorite dumplings, will he tell us his favorite Thai food?
Ooh. So, yeah, my favorite dish, there's a dish at Monsoon Siam that I love that it's like this yellow curry with the wide noodles, but then they take some of the noodles and they crisp them up, they like fry them and put them on top in a little like bird's nest bundle. That's my favorite Thai food. That is my favorite Thai food. It's they do it beautifully. Beautiful presentation and everything, and then they give you the Thai iced tea with a little sweetened condensed milk in there.
Oh, the Thai iced tea is good, dude.
So good.
I had some of that. That is essentially a glass of sugar and whole milk.
It is.
I see why my friend.
Hence my love of Thai iced tea. The first time I had it, I was like, oh my goodness.
Carol says Alex gets it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Carol.
Carol Thorpe. I'm going to tag Emergent Financial Services on this. This is the firm for growing wealth through a common sense investing approach. Emergent Financial Services. Xavier.
What's he going for?
You a zinger.
What's the zinger?
Oh, I love you, Xavier Urpí. I'm giving you props. He goes, Xavier is Alex's father. And one of the things I've noticed about the Urpí son and father relationship is zingers are common.
Oh, yes. They're very common, especially when he's behind a computer screen.
Yeah, because he's got it safe.
He's got it safe. He can just type them in there.
You know he's sitting behind his computer screen laughing out loud
exactly.
right now. And I love the image of that. He says, typical Alex. He loves everyone.
I do. What can I say? I love.
That's why we like him.
I like too many things. If I was very picky and only liked one type of food, it would be much easier. But I liked it all.
Everyone. This is a good question that's come back in from Jennifer. He goes, Jerry, you should do a show where people who don't normally go grocery shopping on a budget, and to see if you guys could stick with that budget. That's something I have to deal with every single week, and it's not easy.
In fact, I did a social experiment on that back when I was taking sociology at PBCC.
Oh, what was the experiment?
It was the budget of what was, I think, minimum wage or poverty level at the time, and you had to see if you could actually survive on it.
For how many people?
For a week, for one person.
Okay, and what was the budget?
Oh, I forget what it was back then. It's higher now because the poverty line has been pushed up. But
I can offer some perspective on this. So when launching this business 13 years ago, May 31st of 2008, I put my life savings into this and went literally 6 months without having any clients. Then I watched the life savings dwindle down to next to nothing. And I legitimately, money was so tight. I've talked about this on the show before. Money was so tight that my meals were either the double cheeseburger from McDonald's, which I believe was $1.04, or going to the Panda Garden buffet that was previously on Emmett Street for lunch buffet, which was $5.99. Then I would take Ziploc bags and put them in my pocket, and when they weren't looking, I would scrape the food off the plate into Ziploc bags, and that was food for later and the next day. And I was able to live a single man, was not going out, was not doing much of anything. I was able to live on like $14 a day. Food. Just food. This doesn't include rent, utilities, gas, wear and tear on the car, all that. But I had food down to like $14 a day. And that was not easy.
That's not
What do you think it is now for a single person? Food.
There's no way it's for the $5.99 lunches are gone.
Yeah.
I don't know what McDonald's is.
There's still the dollar menu at McDonald's. The double cheeseburger's not on it anymore.
Oh, so now
it's been pared down.
The 140 only gets you a single cheeseburger.
Yeah, it might get you a single cheeseburger or 4 nuggets.
Oh, wow.
Or 4 nuggets that are not going to fill you up. The double cheeseburger was very rich in protein, and it stuck with you. Bodo's would be maybe, because you can get like a bacon, egg, and cheese on a plain bagel for what, $3 and change?
3 something, yeah. Bodo's is still there. And then I often joke that the best place to get a big meal under $10 in Charlottesville that remains is like the Mexican restaurants. Your Guadalajara, El Puerto, Sombrero. You don't know. Okay, this works.
And you get the chips and salsa.
And you get the chips and salsa.
To fill you up. So I wonder what you would need, guys. What do you think you would need to make it through a week if you were super strapped on money from a food standpoint only? I mean, you're not going to be grocery shopping most likely. And if you are, it's going to be a Hot Pocket.
That's the irony, right? Because when I did my sociology experiment, I said I want to do it without eating out.
Oh, so you did grocery shopping.
I did grocery shopping.
So it's more with the grocery shopping, isn't it?
I think in many ways it's less.
Really?
Because
frozen foods?
No, not the frozen foods.
Okay.
If you are able to cook at home.
Okay.
Right? If you think about it, right? If you go out and order a chicken dish at a restaurant in Charlottesville, easily over $10 to have this chicken dish. You buy a whole chicken, that thing is feeding you for multiple days and it's costing you less than $10. So grocery shopping actually does save a lot of money. What it costs you is time. So that's what I discovered when I did this experiment. I realized I actually saved more money when I did the experiment grocery shopping than when I attempted to eat out. Because eat out, think about it, you're paying for labor there too. You're paying for labor and upfront.
Well, unless you go the fast casual route.
I mean, if you go all the way to the super fast food, then the labor is so low and the food is obviously so cheap that it's working. But the grocery shopping can really save you a lot, but what it costs, you need to make the time to do it. That's what it costs you, because you need to come home and cook, as opposed to I'm going to grab something to eat and then just go home after that.
Your bro says exact comment from a friend, a cousin in New York, to get a burger and drink in New York City. Chicken sandwich, soda, and fries from McDonald's in New York City between $15 and $20. I mean, now it's, what is it? Judah, have you been to McDonald's or Chick-fil-A? Have you been for a burger, fries, chicken sandwich, soda?
Not at McDonald's.
I mean, is it 10 or 11?
Chick-fil-A is almost $10 now.
At McDonald's, I think you probably get, it depends on the sandwich, but probably $7 or $8.
Yeah.
So
Chick-fil-A is not that cheap anymore.
So is Chick-fil-A over a 10 spot for a meal?
Last time I went there, it was 10, maybe after tax, maybe slightly under 10 after the tax was in. Five Guys is already past 10. It used to be under 10. Now it's well past 10.
Yeah, Citizen Burger Bar, which I love, is 20. And then you're going to think about tip.
That is your gourmet burger.
That is a gourmet burger. The most affordable option, it might be Bodo's. I mean, you got Marco and Luca on the downtown mall.
Marco and Luca is very affordable.
You get 6-7 dumplings for what, $4 or $5?
Mm-hmm, I think so.
Bodo's, you're getting the bacon, egg, and cheese for under $5.
For under $5, okay. So those might be the last
penny pitcher on a budget.
Exactly, if you wanted to eat out.
I love this guy, Alex Urpí, guys. Emergent Financial Services. Trust the name of the game is Emergent Financial Services. Contact them if you want to grow your wealth, your portfolio, and prepare for retirement. Emergent Financial Services. Sombreros, $6 for 2 empanadas, gentlemen.
Yes, and gorditas.
And gorditas.
Gorditas, that's the pupusa, the Salvadorian thing, but like pig, hence the gordita, that means like little chubby.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's also very filling, very good.
Have you been to Mi Casita?
I have.
On Pantops?
Yes.
And the Food Line Shopping Center?
I am a big Mi Casita fan
that
too.
That place is banging.
They have the gorditas there. They have the baleadas, like the one that has the eggs in there. I had a great tacos. No, it wasn't al pastor. It was like a pork taco there. Delicious.
Alex Urpí needs a food show.
I love it.
Show. He would
you
kill
put
it.
Nick and I talking about food all day. We'd be there for like an hour talking about food. What about this?
Carol Thorpe, I'm older than both of you gentlemen, and that theory of home cooking being cheaper has been true for a long time. However, with the rise in the cost of groceries and the upsizing of most restaurant entrees from which they can make a second take-home meal, that gap has closed over the years. That's a good comment there.
That's a good point.
Because you're right. If you don't eat it all, you have a second meal with to go.
If you If it's large enough, you mean like if you don't eat that much, you could.
Yeah, you can eat it for lunch the next day.
You could eat it for lunch the next day. There are some places that'll give you big enough
Certainly.
that you could eat for lunch the next day.
Certainly. Carol Thorpe, A+ right there. My friend, today y mañana. This has been a joy.
This has been a lot of fun.
Today y mañana on Thursday.
Oh, today mañana is going to be a blast. We've got, so first we're going to have Ian Blomsty. So he's the owner of Vitae Spirits. He's going to come on and talk about what's doing up. I think will he be our first repeat guest? I think so. I think we've had an outside of the Urpís.
Well, no, you guys are hosts.
Which doesn't really count.
Yeah.
I think he will be our first guest that will be returning for a second time.
Very nice.
So he's going to talk about new things that are happening with Vitae. There's new events coming up. Wasted Connected, maybe a little bit about the alcohol beverage industry, the ABC industry. And then we're going to have Jackie Slusher and Maiden Watson. I hope I'm pronouncing Jackie's last name right, from Craft CVille. So they do basically, I don't want to call it pop-up shop, but like pop-ups of craft markets that are going to be at Stonefield. I think there's one coming up on October 23rd and one on November 20th. So we'll talk with them a little bit about what that's like, how people can get connected. So two great ways. I mean, if you want to support local business, two great ways to support local business. First, because Ian is one, and then secondly, because Craft CVille will have a lot of local vendors selling their wares.
I'm going to put this in the feed right now, and I'm tagging the shops at Stonefield. You would make a fantastic partner of Today y Mañana. And then I'm tagging Nicholas Urpí. That's going to their decision makers as we speak.
There you go.
Shops at Stonefield, you would make a fantastic partner of Today y Mañana. Nicholas Urpí, close that deal. Get the closer involved if you need to. Mariano Rivera, come on.
There you go.
My friend, I cannot wait for Thursday.
A pleasure, as always.
I enjoy you.
Such a blast.
I enjoy you very much. Thank you for
Same
the
here.
comments that are coming in. Tomorrow, my friends, is Wednesday, and we are efforting Dr. Bob Rotella, who's a sports psychologist on the PGA Tour. He has a new book out, so Dr. Bob Rotella, we'll see if we can make that happen in the very near future. Nikki Hernandez, the author, is going to join us on Thursday. She's
Awesome.
a teacher at William Monroe High School. She has a book out on millennials. And next week, Lee Elberson, the CEO of Claiborne
I know
Education,
Lee.
the chairman.
He's our chair at Community Investment Collaborative.
Of CIC.
CIC, wonderful man.
Lee Elberson on the 6th of October as we book into next week. Folks, this is the I Love CVille Show where we have straightforward, fun, and engaging conversations in front of a lot of people. Thank you for joining us. We have a conference call in 7 minutes. We hope you guys have a good afternoon. We'll see you tomorrow at 12:30. Take care. Alex, excellent work.
Oh, thank you. As always.
Excellent work.
Love it.
I loved it too. In person, the way to go.
Oh, it's so much fun in person.